Let's go! What time is it? Game time! Game time! It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
And the Ohio State Buckeyes are the first national champions of the playoff era.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to football.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Futbol to Futbol, the NFL Week 4 recap edition, which also includes us talking about the Monday Night Football game that just ended between the Detroit Lions and Seattle Seahawks, and we'll also get into some college football Week 5. And finally, we ended with our top 5 power rankings and our MVP of the week. Should be simple enough there for everybody to understand. But I'm your host, Sean Garmer, and with me today is a man that I'm sure is very solemn, as he had to watch we had to watch our Cowboys just give it away.
Yeah. You know what? What matters more to me at the moment is the fact that Dez Bryant's on his Twitter right now messaging Calvin Johnson asking, hey, dude, what's up with the gimmick infringement? Reaching out for the end zone and not getting things done.
And on the other side, we all broadcasted a game in which his Jets just wiped the floor so badly with the Dolphins, they fired their coach.
Yeah, it's nice to be a fan of the team, the best team on this podcast.
You had to rub it in.
Yeah.
I know. Hey,
So,
the season's not over.
Before we get to talking about that, we've got some cool things to say about that, I'm sure. Which, hopefully, there's not a whole lot of correlation between the people that listen to that baseball preview that we did last night to tonight, because we did kind of talk about that yesterday, but we'll talk about it again, just for a refresh for some people. But either way, we should start here with the Monday Night Football game, which ended in some controversy because Cam Chancellor made a great play to push the ball out of Calvin Johnson's hands there on what would have been a touchdown and pretty much probably the game-ending play, and a win for the Lions, first ever win for the Lions away at Seattle, which is something that doesn't happen very often at all. It's apparently been called an illegal play. They're saying that it was helped across the end zone on purpose for a touchback, and that should have been called batting the ball. Should the Lions really be... I mean, they seem to not be focusing too much on it as far as, the press conferences and all that. They seem to be more dejected about the loss and what this means for this team. But if you're a Lions fan, if you're a Lions player, Lions media member, whatever, is it a lot about that? Had they earned the ability to say it's because of that they lost this game, or was it more about something else?
You can't say that at all, because really, honestly, no matter what happened there, Cam Chancellor made a great play, and you can't be promised that, even if they would have changed that call, that anything else would have happened for the Lions. You can't really say that. So, yeah, sure, it wasn't a good thing. The refs should have caught that, but for me personally, looking at that game, it was ended by what Cam Chancellor did, and, that was making sure the ball came out.
Right. Randy? You have any?
This was just my worst nightmare of a result. Because now Cam Chancellor's the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And the refs got some more money in their pocket from Seattle.
You know,
now I get to hear
objective here, Randy.
Absolutely, but I'm very objective. And listen, the fact of the matter is, Cam Chancellor did make a great play. He knocks the ball out, and I forget who the other Seattle player is now that is the one that knocks the ball out of the end zone. But he makes the most ridiculous play because there's no one around him, and he just reaches out and knocks the ball away. And the refs go, that's all right. That's fine. But listen, the Lions were bigger men because they know that they played like complete turds on offense for 50-some minutes of this game, and their defense were the only reason they were even in this. So they go, you know what? I mean, we disagree with the call, but what are you going to do? We're just going to move on to next week because there's nothing they can do. I mean, even if the NFL comes out and say, our bad, they don't go and...
Yeah, it's not like they go back and go, oh, yeah, sure, you can have
the result is what it is, and it's whatever. And when you're 0-4, it's like, well, I mean, this is just our season. This is just how things go. So, I mean, I'm glad that Dave went out and were the bigger men and just are moving on with it. But another Monday night where Seattle screws over an NFC North team. It's just deja vu.
Yeah, that's funny. The one thing I take out of this, and it's kind of funny, I take out that, the Detroit Lions defense just did everything they could to try to keep this team afloat. They really did. I mean, I really enjoyed them rushing Wilson all night long. I mean, they kept him on the run. Yeah, sure, he had the juju.
He had some pretty nice plays.
Oh, yeah.
Away from that defense,
and that brings me to my next thing. Randy, we have a good, call-in every once in a while. We've had him on the show a few times. The Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name right now. Mike, thank you. I need to get his personal information because I need to find out what member of the Pittsburgh Steelers went over to Seattle and helped the Juju move on to them, because the Steelers don't have it anymore, but the Seattle Seahawks just gained it. So apparently there's something going on there, a connection, because I'm going to hire that guy away for the Cowboys. So it just nothing. No matter what Russell Wilson did, it became gold. Yeah, Detroit's their defense held up long enough to keep Russell Wilson from putting a 40 burger on him, because I really think they could have. It's just up to Detroit's defense to keep this game in play, and they did. They kept it within stands. They kept it so close that Calvin Johnson could have won this game for him right there at the end. That's how good the Detroit Lions defense. Now, I'm not saying they did great all game. I'm just saying that pass rush, man. That pass rush kept Wilson guessing.
Yeah, it did. It's just one of those where you have to wonder if you make some more of those tackles that you should have made. Obviously, the broken play that eventually led to the touchdown, that's a big one. That's where look, Russell Wilson is one of the hardest guys to bring down. Who am I to say that, they should have done it more than they did or whatever, but that's also on the defense for, you're the one that let that busted play happen. You're the one that didn't come up big in those situations. They did eventually do it a second time, but that's what was sad, is the defense had given them another opportunity with a fumble previously, and they did nothing with it. And that's where I was going to ask you, Randy, is this about Seahawks defense just being too good, or basically stifling the Lions at every turn, or was it the Lions just not executing?
Listen, I'm not going to take anything away from the Seattle defense. We all know that they're absolutely amazing, especially at home. But this is, to me, way more about Detroit just not having it on offense anymore. I mean, they did nothing this whole game. Their running attack is non-existent, and it's all on Matthew Stafford, who just... I wish I could explain it, just isn't right. Calvin Johnson makes a couple good plays, but nothing amazing. Golden Tate was supposed to be this amazing player this year, this big breakout star. He's been nowhere to be found, and there's no one else on that team that's really helping out on offense. It's all the defense or nothing with Detroit, and it's showing with their record.
And can I say this as well? What you just said right there, Randy, is exactly what's going on. And not only that, you've got to look at the front five for the Lions. That's why this offense is not moving. Golden Tate, too good of a receiver not to be getting things done. It's because Matthew Stafford's rushed. Calvin Johnson, legend. Abdullah could be running for miles and miles if that offensive line could get things together.
I think their fullback had just as many, if not more yards than Abdullah. I mean, no George Bell for this game, obviously, but it looked like they didn't need him necessarily.
Yeah. But the front five, just look at that. And I want to say this, too. We're going to talk about a game coming up here in not too long, and their name is the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're having the exact same problems Detroit is. And why is that? Front five. So that's my thing. I think Detroit's not a terrible team.
The front five and the front. The difference is the Eagles can't. They can't rush anyone, and when they were rushing in that game, Cousins was getting away from them. I mean, so that's the difference. Like, they don't have the same rush that even Detroit does. Where Detroit was just. It's just, man, that's Russell Wilson, man. That dude's fast. He's elusive. He gets away from you. Sam Bradford is not Russell Wilson.
Gary, you brought up the point about the offensive line, and that's actually been a big topic of conversation I've heard over airways and TV and such this week. And I'm curious what you guys think, where a lot of NFL experts are saying that the difference between the NFL play style and the college play style is so different now that it's not like the quarterbacks that are having the most issue getting transitioned over. It's the offensive linemen, because they played that spread style and they block so differently in college that they come to the NFL and they can't block. They couldn't block you or I because it's completely different. Do you think that is as big of a deal as they're bringing up?
Yeah, I think it is. I think you make a great point here, Randy. And I've heard other offensive linemen that have played in the league before talk about this. In fact, I'll bring up a name. I'll name drop here. Nate Newton was famous from the Dallas Cowboys all-star offensive lines in the 90s. He mentions this quite a bit. He says the new offensive linemen, the kids coming out of college now, are just not geared to handle some of these, like the running game and things like that, because they're so used to the spread offense. They're so used to just pass blocking, and run blocking is not as important to those guys and those teams. So they lack the skills. And not only that, in his day, they just had to be big, huge bulldozers, and they didn't have to have any athleticism. He says that some of these kids now, if they're athletic and strong, they're going to the Pro Bowl. And if they're just athletic and not strong, these guys coming out of college and they're not doing anything to help their team. So I think that is a problem. I think that, this is a completely different style, and that's why we're not seeing the success in, having tons of great offensive linemen in the league.
Yeah, and what's weird, though, too, is that we've seen some of these guys actually come out their first years and do well. And then it's like from year to year, we'll see them fall flat. And they have that sophomore. It seems to hit the sophomore slump. Seems to hit the offensive lineman even worse than almost any other position. Like, where you just either they get hurt or you don't hear anything about them at all. Or for every Tyron Smith, there's a bunch, like 5 or 6 guys that don't even come to that level. And it's amazing to me. I think what Randy brought up is interesting, but I think that also comes from the quarterbacks too. Not everybody is Winston and Mariota. All the other ones, they wind up not panning out. How many of these big quarterbacks in college have just become nothing in the NFL? Lately. When was the last one? It's amazing to me, like how now it's all about the running backs and receivers, and we're going to see that later in a game we're going to talk about too. He was hurt for most of the season. First game where he plays the whole time, just runs all over a defense that was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
But so is the season over here for the Lions? Did they have a prayer?
The season was over after last week, and now it's just kind of official.
Yeah, I agree. I don't laugh at the Lions. I laugh at the thought that, the teams that they have to play against, especially their division. I mean, you're already down because you have to play the Green Bay Packers, but Minnesota's playing better too. I mean, we'll talk about them later as well, but I just think, they're really not that great.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot of. I mean, do you do something about? I'm not saying maybe Jim Caldwell, but do you do anything as far as coaching or anything if you're the ownership, or do you put this all on your players? Or
I think you look at the player talent that you have and you evaluate it there. And you see the issues you're having, and I talked about it tonight. Once again, I talked about the front five. They got some issues there. They've got to get that worked on, and they have to realize that Calvin Johnson is up there in age. Calvin Johnson is not Calvin Johnson of even 2 years ago. He's slowing down, and so I think they've got to get some young blood in there when it comes to receiving core.
That's what's so sad about this is, the Lions, they win the turnover battle. They weren't outgained a lot in the passing game. They were outgained by like 60 in rushing because Thomas Rawls, apparently it was between him and Russell Wilson. And you have to wonder if Fred Jackson didn't go down, if he would have kept doing his thing. Mm-hmm. But
I mean, I'm just saying, that's the one thing you got to look at, Sean, is that they've got to evaluate talent. And not only that, when Gruden said that all their money is tied up in Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford, that's an issue.
Yeah, but then also, you have to give Matthew Stafford the time, like you were saying, to actually be able to do anything for that offense. I mean, 203 yards passing, no touchdowns. He was 24-35, but that's horrible. If you're a quarterback, I mean, your only touchdown in this game comes off a fumble recovery, and you're the Detroit Lions, who were lighting people up not too long ago. I mean,
they were just in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson, 56 yards. That's it. Your next highest receiver, a running back. I mean, horrible. I mean, their defense showed up tonight. They sacked. I don't know how many times they sacked Russell Wilson in this game. About 6 times. 2 fumble recoveries. About 6 tackles for loss. I mean, come on, whoever the offensive coordinator is, I'm seriously considering. You might want to do something with that guy. He's not doing his job. That offense is inept. I mean, look. Let's be clear here. Seahawks defense, awesome. Calvin Johnson, they weren't even having a safety over the top of the guy. They were just that good. But there's been situations in many of these games where the first 2 games you could probably put it on the defense because they were putting up the points. They just were not stopping anyone. The last game, I can't really remember exactly what happened. Was it you that watched that game, Randy, or was it?
Yeah, it was. They played Denver. And Denver's defense is nothing to...
Yeah. So, I mean, is it that they just ran into 2 freaking great defenses back to back? I mean,
that's where we're going to have to wait and see. They get the Cardinals next week at home, which, when you look at it on paper, should be a very close game as well. Cardinals don't have the best defense out there. They have a good one. And their offense kind of got shown up against a better defense, which is what we were curious about. So we'll see how they react at home against Arizona next week. But yeah, Denver and Seattle, especially when you're at Seattle, that's back-to-back extremely tough defenses. So, I mean, numbers-wise, it looks bad for Detroit, but it's just a tough start for the season for them, and it's probably cost them the whole rest of the year as far as playoffs go. But for Detroit, I'm not overreacting yet.
All right, so I think we covered that one pretty much here. So let's move on to something special that we got to do on Sunday morning. Randy got up earlier than all of us, but I pretty much got up at the same equivalent time as Randy. So Randy got up at almost 3:30 in the morning. I got up at 6 so that we could prepare to broadcast our first game. Look, we're not getting paid for this. Anybody can go on Rival.tv and do it. Doesn't take any. I mean, you do kind of have to have some talent, and you do have to have some kind of flow with who you're doing with. I wouldn't be the other guy. I mean, not to shame that guy or anything, but I wouldn't be the other Jets broadcast that was going on, which is some dude on his couch just yelling at every play. I mean, that's, so, I mean, if you want to do that, go ahead. You can do that too, I guess. But I like the fact that the quotes that were taken from what we said were stuff that had nothing to do with football. That was great. My quote about the running over the old lady, that was apparently a clip that was taken out of the broadcast. And there was the other one, I can't remember what it was, that had nothing to do with football either, that was taken out of the broadcast and put on.
Oh, it was about football. It was about the punter.
Oh, yeah, the punter.
Yes.
About it's going bad when the only thing you can say is, well, the punter's doing well. Which is funny because I have that exact thing for another team that we're going to talk about later.
So, what I'm talking about here is the London game, the first London game of the season, the Jets against the Dolphins. That was a dream for me, just to be able to do that. I mean, I know we didn't make it, a total, spectacle thing that we probably could have, but it's the first one. I thought we did pretty good. The people at Rabble thought we did pretty good. I don't know if they're going to tell us that we did pretty bad, but, so, I mean, what did you guys take from that? Just saying that, does it make you want to do it again? Do you feel like you did all right, Gary?
Yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, it was a blast, and I wish I could have done the entire show, the entire game. I mean, and it was just a blast, and I've always wanted to do it too as well, Sean. I've did that when I was younger on Madden. I'd record myself with a buddy, and we'd call the game. It's corny and cheesy, but we did it. But this on a more professional level, getting a chance to reach out and let people hear, what we have to say about the game and play by play, it's just a lot of fun, and I want to do it again. I really do. It just, man, our time constraints really kicked me in the butt, man.
That freaking, I was nervous for part of it. I was like, I'm sure I sound terrible doing this, so I'm just like, well, we're just going to keep going. But, I tried to get my dad to listen in, and he apparently ran into a problem where his phone kept trying to charge him. I think he was downloading the wrong app. But, Randy, how do you feel after it was over and everything? I mean, obviously, your team won, which helped.
Yeah, I was exactly like you guys, where I was like, this is a dream. I mean, again, it's not like a professional gig, which is the dream, but it's that next step. It's one step closer, and it was just a lot of fun. I remember going into it being really nervous, going, okay, what other things can we talk about? Because there's going to be some downtime, and how do we fill this dead air and stuff? And it's like there's a lot of stuff that I had come up with we never even got close to. It was like, well, we can just talk about fantasy football, I guess. And there was only a couple times where we needed to bring that up, and it was we flowed, I thought, pretty well, and kept it at least semi-entertaining for us amateurs. So I was proud of all three of us and how things went, and I'm excited to do it again next Sunday.
Yeah, we will be doing that 49ers and Giants game on Sunday night. So just go to Rival.tv if you're using your computer, or go to Rival TV on Android or iOS. You download the app, and then you can go into previous. Either go to the previous tab or just search WTM Net, where you can find our broadcast of that. We went the whole 3 hours plus pregame and postgame, and so it wound up being like a completely 4-hour deal there. And yeah, so you'll see that we have it set there for the Sunday night game, and you just click on it whenever you want to on Sunday night, and you should be able to hear us. So check it out and let us know. It was pretty cool to have people commenting while we were saying stuff, and had a few people that actually liked it. So I was surprised, that one guy said he listened to our whole microphone test. So, but I'm talking about the game here, which we got to do the ins and outs of it during the post game, but just for the people who didn't obviously get to listen to that, which I'm sure is the majority here, to me I've watched the Dolphins every single play, every single down that they've thrown, ran, passed, defended this year, and it's the same problems every single time. The defense does not show up. It's at least the defensive line. And Ndamukong Suh, where are you? You've not been there. Now, granted, the offensive line of the Jets was keying in on him. Ivory ran right through him for that first touchdown. It's just, to me, it was just, again, getting behind so badly at first and then trying to make the heroic comeback. And to their credit, I mean, Jarvis Landry with his passion, his everything, and all that, he tried to one man will him back, and I think he was frustrated at himself because he knew he should have caught that ball in the end zone there. I mean, this is why, Gary, I think it's the right decision to fire Joe Philbin. I said it to Randy when we were about to go out there. I asked him, do you think somebody needs to get fired? He wasn't too sure about it. I was straight up just saying somebody needs to get cut loose at the end of this, especially it being the bye week for both teams here. You're 1-3. That Washington game that you won didn't look pretty at all. You got saved by Jarvis Landry punt return. You really should be 0-4. And now here comes former Cowboy tight end Dan Campbell into the situation. I listened to his press conference. He sounded pretty confident. He sounded like somebody who knew what he was doing. Obviously, saying things and doing things is two different things. But he talked about we need to change the culture of the team. That he felt like there's a lot of guys that aren't going out there. They're playing hard, but they're not challenging themselves to play even better. And obviously that comes to the coaching staff too. So, Gary, do you think it was the right decision to basically let everybody go because the defensive coordinator's gone too? So.
The defensive coordinator, I definitely agree with. I think that's the guy that needs to be gone immediately, especially not motivating those players, especially the highest paid player probably on the entire team, Ndamukong Suh. I just don't understand why, those players aren't motivated enough. And to me, it pointed to leadership. The head coach, I think I'm a little bit of an optimist. A lot of times I feel like you got to give them until at least half the season. Can they come back and make their season work? They still have an opportunity, but at the same point, I don't know. This is a pretty tall hill to climb. I mean, you got the New England Patriots rolling right now. It had to take a catastrophe for them to fall apart. So I'm just looking at it as, man, you got to give them at least half the season. But you know what? It's okay with me. I'm not upset. I mean, Dan Campbell seems like he's a guy that wants to change the culture. He talked about that in his press conference. And if he can get that going with the Dolphins, hey, may not win this season. Maybe next season they will. That's what you want to get going. And Dan Campbell could be that guy to do it.
Randy, for your side, I'm sure you're feeling great right now. 3-1 going into that bye. The offense obviously helps when the defense isn't doing a whole lot there. But, Brandon Marshall over 100 yards again. Chris Ivory was running through that defense like butter at times. Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't really pressured that much, on the defensive side. Darrelle Revis made some big plays, that they just made plays when they needed to. They got in Tannehill's face. How far do you think the Jets, especially with what we saw from the Bills, do you think that certainly the Jets are that number 2 team now in the division for sure?
Yeah, I think so. I liked a lot of what I saw out of the Jets. I know Miami has kind of given up on themselves and all of that. Chris Ivory proved that you cannot just push him around. You have to wrap him up. And I kind of disagree on the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't pressured. He was quite a bit. It was just, we talked about it countless times.
He was able to escape.
But it was like, because they were only bringing 3 or 4 guys, and, even though he was a bit older, he was able to escape and get the first downs and stuff. But there was a lot more pressure against Fitzpatrick than really the stats showed, and it kind of affected the way he played in the second half, and that's why the Jets couldn't turn what was basically a blowout into a blowout on the scoreboard. Their offense kind of stopped going in the second half, but I liked what the Jets did all around. Not a ton of mistakes. Got the key turnovers at the end of the game when they needed them most, and now they go into the bye week before facing Washington, and yeah, I like their chances now of being a wild card team.
Yeah, I mean, well, but when you hold a team, which you can also say this is Miami's ineptitude of 0-13 on 3rd and 4th downs. I mean, your defense was doing something right. Well, not to mention Miami's. It's just that stat by itself just completely amazed me watching that game. Just on the 2, you have 8 plays to score a touchdown, and you can't do it in 8 plays. That's the moment when I said they're not winning this game, and I fear for someone. Because at one point, I don't care how bad Lamar Miller was in that game, you have to run to make them feel like there's some kind of other thing you're going to do here besides pass 8 times. But whatever. I do have a question, because you brought up the fact that Geno Smith was back at practice. Do you go with Geno Smith after the bye, or you just keep on with Fitzpatrick? See, this is the thing with, if you go with Fitzpatrick after this bye week, how do you know when he's had that time where you say, okay, well, we got to go to the other guy? I mean, because even if he has a bad game, he's still been the guy that's led you to this point. I don't think you can just say, okay, he has that one bad game, we got to put Geno Smith back in.
This is one of those weird situations where, the quarterback gets hurt and the backup comes in and is performing well, and now the starter is back, and it's like, okay, now what do we do? The Jets have basically said previously that, this is Fitzpatrick's team now, and even when Geno Smith comes back, he's going to be the starter. But it's not like Geno Smith has lost his job on the field. Like I've said several times, he looked better at the end of last year. I'm not saying he's going to be a top quarterback, but neither is Fitzpatrick. But it's very difficult to look at it and go, well, now Geno Smith would be way better than Fitzpatrick. So, the Jets being 3-1, I'm sure holds a lot of value into this decision that the Jets are going to make over the 2 weeks. But I'm not really even against either decision that they make. If they stick with Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's a decent enough quarterback that knows how to control the offense and control the clock, and he has enough weapons around him. And if they go with Geno, it was his team to begin with. I think this would be a breakout year if given the chance, so give him that chance. So I wouldn't be against either decision, but I think they're going to stick with Fitzpatrick.
Gary, where would you go here?
I go with what works. Right now, what works is Fitzpatrick. It's going, the way they want it to go. He's keeping them in games. He hasn't been one of the quarterbacks that we've seen in basically around the league that, he's the backup and he's making mistakes that are causing games and just basically not really producing like they want. Fitzpatrick's producing, who's doing everything the coaching staff is asking him to do. So, yes, I put all my chips behind him until he proves he can't. Once he's humanized, once people are figuring out Fitzpatrick and it just doesn't seem like that they can get anything done, then that's when I consider the change. I just feel like if you change Fitzpatrick right now and you put Geno Smith in there, even though Geno Smith is talented, like Randy said, I think he's got a lot of potential. I just don't know how the rest of the team is going to gel around him. They're right with Fitzpatrick now. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
I just wish you could take the mental capacity of, the Harvard graduate of Ryan Fitzpatrick and put it in the body of Geno Smith, because Fitzpatrick makes such amazing decisions and then just his arm can't get to where he thinks it can. I mean, I made the joke 10 times that he kept underthrowing Devin Smith unless Devin Smith just stopped moving. I don't think Geno Smith would underthrow him, but Geno Smith also has shown the inability to stop himself from trying to force the ball in there, and that's something Fitzpatrick just doesn't do. So I wish he could combine the two quarterbacks, and then it'd be great. But.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I wish Brandon Weeden could get Romo's brain, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not happening. I mean, we'll get to that game, but I don't think that's Brandon Weeden's fault either. So let's move on to games that we haven't watched extensively here, starting for me with the Houston Texans visiting the Atlanta Falcons. Arian Foster makes a season debut and goes absolutely nowhere. They pretty much got punched in the mouth from the get-go when Ryan Mallett throws an interception on his second pass. Just Atlanta was in Ryan Mallett's face. I think he had like 150 yards passing for the game. They were up 42-0 when Brian Hoyer came in the game. Brian Hoyer wound up throwing 2 touchdowns and 246 yards, obviously total garbage time. Devonta Freeman, another 3 touchdowns. That dude just, man, he's taking opportunities. And talk about taking the ball and running with it, literally. I don't think you could have, that saying has never meant more than what happened here with Devonta Freeman. But Randy, I saw this stat and I couldn't believe it myself, but the last 2 times the Falcons were 4-0, they reached the NFC Championship game. Do they get that again?
Oh, it's so tough to tell right now because the NFC is so solid. I mean, if they were in the AFC right now, I say without a doubt it's probably them versus the Patriots. But with the NFC, where you have the Packers who are so good, the Cardinals who are really good, the Seahawks don't show it record-wise, but they're still a very solid team. The Giants are starting to get things going a little bit. It's tough to say that they're going to make it to the NFC Championship game, but they could, especially if they can continue this roll and get a bye week, which is possible with how weak some of the teams that they have on their schedule have been looking. Then they have a chance, but right now I'm going to say no. No, I don't think they're going to make it there.
Well, Gary, I should also note that Foster also had his own player make him fumble the ball, which isn't good. The entire team had 4 turnovers, which is not what you want. But they did hold Julio Jones in check. We said that wasn't going to happen, and they did. Leonard Hankerson was the one that got over 100 yards. So, there you go. Julio Jones only got a measly 38 yards, Randy. So you said
wow.
That I think we all said he would go over in that game, and that certainly didn't.
Yeah, and that kind of goes as a plus for Atlanta. They went away from Julio Jones and spread the ball out more, so now it's not a Julio Jones or bust team.
Yeah, because T.J. Ward got a lot of garbage time rushing, and Devonta Freeman caught a bunch of balls too. So, that's good for Atlanta. So, like you said, they can spread it around. But if you're Houston at this point, Gary, apparently Ryan Mallett's keeping his job for Thursday. You did have Hoyer come in, throw 2 touchdowns, 246 yards, but it's the same thing that happened with Mallett. He threw 100 yards and a touchdown in that game against the Chiefs in the first game. That's why they let Mallett start. But do you go back to Hoyer for that Thursday night game?
If it's me personally, I think I would. You got a Colts team that is a good team, but not as good as they were in the past. You take the advantage of the defense that they have. I just think that Mallett is going to give a very average defense a boost. He's making mistakes. You're seeing him throw picks every week. You're seeing him make mental errors.
Well, not to mention they do have a corner in Vontae Davis who knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
he can make Mallett's life a problem. To me, my problem with Mallett, he makes it so obvious for him to throw the ball that you can't do that in the NFL.
Well, that's my point.
Do that.
And that's exactly my point, though, Sean. It's the fact that, you say Vontae Davis. You forget about Vontae Davis. We don't even worry about him. Let's worry about the slot cornerback that's going to read those same eyes, and he doesn't have to go to a major university. He could be going to Podunk University, play D1 ball or Division III ball, and, he's going to pick off that pass. It doesn't matter what guy it is. They're going to be able to do it because that's not the way the NFL quarterback is made to play the game. You don't stare down people. Mallett makes those bad mistakes. Hoyer is just a better quarterback right now. If I want to have anything to do with winning this year, I go ahead and go back to Hoyer and say, Mallett, we've got to see more from you. Maybe next preseason prove us wrong. But right now, unless you just want to give up on the season, I say start Mallett if you're done. If you're done right now, start Mallett.
And that division is so bad that if they beat the Colts on Thursday, they're in it still. Mm-hmm. So, that's something you really have to think about if you're Bill O'Brien right now. Even though he took a lot of the blame, he blamed himself for that game. Which, I guess you can put it on him, but when you have an inept quarterback like that,
yeah.
I don't know.
I get it. It's a quick turnaround, but guess what? Day one, when this football team stepped on the field, Hoyer was their quarterback. It's a different story if Mallett's their starting quarterback game one. These receivers are used to Hoyer. They played with him in preseason. These just the whole offensive line is used to Hoyer. Everybody's used to this guy. It's not like you're putting in a brand new guy. It's not like throwing Michael Vick in the mix in here and he's all of a sudden leading your team. No, it's a guy they know.
Right. So let's move on to Randy's first game here. The New York Giants go into Buffalo and surprisingly take care of the Buffalo Bills.
They didn't just take care of them. They basically just controlled this whole game. And a lot of it has to do with, McCoy wasn't there, Watkins wasn't there, and Taylor just didn't have any help. He did struggle a little bit himself, 28 of 42, just 274. But a lot of it was he just could not find timing with some of his receivers that weren't named Charles Clay. Everyone else, he was throwing it behind him a few times. He would hit him in the hands and they would drop it for him. So offensively, they just could not get anything going. Carlos Williams was kind of a disappointment. And on the Giants side of the ball, it wasn't like they were doing anything special. They just got the job done when needed offensively. Rashad Jennings has this ridiculous reception that he breaks off for 51 yards, basically a little dump pass off to the side, and he breaks a few tackles and takes it to the house. And to me, that was when the game ended. It was right there. You could kind of tell Buffalo they were exhausted on defense and they couldn't tackle anymore. And on top of that, listen, this game is ugly. It was completely ugly to watch. There was 28 combined penalties for 220 yards. The Buffalo Bills had 17 of them for 135. They shot themselves in the foot several times.
Rex Ryan thing, though, he just does not prepare his guys for.
Well, they just make stupid decisions. It would be one thing if it was just a lot of defensive holding or defensive pass interference. We saw a lot of that with the Jets too, but it was a lot of unnecessary roughness after plays.
That's what was so sad. We forgot to mention. The one time they actually moved the ball down the field was because they had two consecutive huge-ass pass interference penalties. Talk about I'm sorry. Just talk about ineptitude for the Dolphins.
Yeah, but it's ineptitude for the Bills, too. They got to get this fixed. Gary, I got to ask you, Sean asked me how I felt about the Jets. How do you feel about the Bills now? Can they compete with all these mental mistakes?
No, they can't. And this is the second game that I really felt they disappointed me personally because I've kind of been on their bandwagon here. I thought the Bills had definitely fixed some of their mistakes. I thought their defense was just one of the better ones in the league. I felt like Tyrod Taylor was the right quarterback in this situation to help get this team going. And not that they're not that Tyrod Taylor is bad or anything, but I think that we're coming back down to earth on the Buffalo Bills, and we're realizing that, hey, they're still growing as a team. They're still trying to transition into being a better team in this league. So I just feel like if you can't beat a team like the New York Giants, and not to hate on the Giants, because trust me, the Giants are better than I personally, the rest of their cohorts in the NFC East. Doesn't say a whole lot because that whole division is kind of sucky right now. But I just feel like right now at this point, Buffalo is not at the point they need to be to even get close to winning this division. And not only that, I mean, they may be the third best at this point, just by seeing what they can put on the field and how they've been playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, and like I said, the Giants didn't do anything special. I mean, they basically won the field position game. I think there were, in the middle of this game, there were 3 straight drives that Buffalo started inside their 10 and just couldn't get anything going. So the Giants completely dominated that part of the game, which is all they needed to do. And there was a stat I saw, and the commentators even mentioned it during the game, but the Buffalo punter, I think, saves them in this game from being a complete blowout. Yes, it's a joke I made during the Jets game that it's bad if people are noticing how good the punter is being, but he had 7 punts, and he averaged almost 52 yards. And most of those punts were out of his own end zone. So he kept them from completely giving up the field position where a bad punt would mean straight-up points for the Giants. But Sean, I got to ask you, listen, the Giants have looked better the last 2 weeks, and they weren't terrible the first 2. They just, let games slip away. So let's change that up a little bit. Say they don't blow those 2 games to the Cowboys and the Falcons. So say they're 4-0. Would we be considering them as one of the top teams in the league right now?
Well, yeah. If you're 4-0, why would you not be considered one of the top teams in the league right now? I mean, I'm sure you could ask the Carolina Panthers that same question. I would here's the difference. So, I mean, the Giants have a much more dependable receiver, a quarterback that has won some championships that gives you and a defense that, to me, honestly, I don't know why you're not. Whoever's not considering the Panthers one of the best teams in the league right now, you're an idiot. Cam Newton might be doing it by himself, but they're winning games. Yes, I think the difference is the Panthers, who they have played, is not, up to snuff as far as, have they beaten one of these big tier teams? No, they haven't, but they're winning the games they need to win, and Cam Newton is basically putting this team on his back, along with the defense. Josh Norman, again, big in that game. So it's like, to me, yes, the Giants would be, but I think, the Giants, they're doing what the Giants do. They're kind of coming on when it matters. They still got to play some teams. Let's see what happens. But we've seen the Giants do this a lot of times where they don't look that great at first, and then they kind of come on late, or they come on towards the middle of the season, and you got to take them seriously. And I think with Eli Manning and Beckham, and if Cruz can ever get right or whatever, I think you've got a dynamite team there. Luke Jennings was really important in this game too. So to me, Giants they're the lead dogs in that division until Romo is there, and unless the Cowboys are just completely out of it by the time Romo comes. And who would have thought that, honestly? I mean, who would have thought we'd be sitting here thinking about that, especially when we go on to the next game, which is a division battle in the same division, Philadelphia Eagles against Washington Redskins. Listen, the Washington Redskins made Sam Bradford's life hell in this game. He was constantly being pressured, and to Sam Bradford's credit, he escaped the pressure quite a few times, even threw a touchdown, escaping the pressure to Brent Selleck, and then he ran it in, or whatever. DeMarco Murray had one big run, and then after that, who cares? He was nothing. Ryan Matthews, nothing in this game. Actually, Nelson Aguilar was the one that showed up in this game. He had a big catch, and then the next catch he fumbles it. So, I mean, the Eagles just, offensively, they're doing the things they need to do. They're just not. They make dumb mistakes, or they have dumb penalties that set them back, or Bradford would eventually get sacked, which would happen, and then they'd get just completely obliterated. And it's just like, I think was it the Eagles game or was it the other game that I watched? That I think it was the Eagles game. Bradford gets sacked on 2 consecutive plays. He gets sacked. because the Eagles' offensive line cannot block anyone. I don't understand how this offensive line got so bad in 1 year. I don't know if it's the scheme the defenses are running because they know they're going to try to get the ball out quick or whatever, or what it is, but it's amazing to me. I mean, Washington's defense is good. Let's not play around. They're second in the league for a reason. But, they're without D'Angelo Hall. Chris Culliver got blown up on 2 of these big long pass plays. I mean, one of them was for a touchdown. So, it's just... And on the offensive side, Alfred Morris didn't come on until in the fourth quarter. He was stuffed. Matt Jones was stuffed. The guy that showed up in this game was Chris Thompson. And Randy was right when he said Chris Thompson's somebody you got to watch out for because there might be a 3-headed monster over there. Well, Matt Jones might all of a sudden become like null and void really quick because he was nothing in this game. And Kirk Cousins, I think he's starting to come on a little bit. That guy looked like a much more mature, much more thought-processing quarterback. He's making the throws to whoever is there. He's making the throws downfield. He's making the out passes. He's making the passes that you want to see him throw. So to me, I think don't hold Washington down on this. Randy, is Washington a player now that they're 2-2, just like everybody else?
Well, in this division, you kind of have to make them a player.
But I mean, okay, do you take them any kind of seriously?
No, I don't. I mean, and I think that's going to get proven over the next 2 weeks. Listen, if they could win, I'll put this out there right now. They have 2 very difficult games on the road in the next 2 weeks. If they win one of them, they're a legit player in the NFC, at least to make the playoffs. They go to Atlanta and then to the New York Jets. If they win either of those, then they're a better team than I thought they were. But until then, come back to me later.
Well, to be fair, everybody else in the NFC East has lost to Atlanta already. So if they're somehow able to beat Atlanta, I think they would technically be the top dogs. So Atlanta's making everybody look bad right now. So Gary, on the other side of things, if you're the Eagles, is this more on the offense or is this more on the defense? Who are you? Who's getting the blame for this right now?
I think, honestly, the offense. And the reason I point out the offense specifically is because they are making lots of mental mistakes. All the things that everyone was promised are not coming to fruition. I mean, they've got 3 running backs, let's be honest, that are very talented. Darren Sproles has been proven to be one of the better guys.
Sproles, again, was the only real bright spot in the whole running game.
Exactly, and I think his talent is just that good. I mean, even in bad times, he can still look good. But yeah, DeMarco Murray still struggling, even though he did lead this team in rushing this week. But then, I'm sure he's thrilled about that finally, even though it wasn't a whole lot. And even Matthew. So I'm just saying, you got that situation. Plus, Bradford is not playing up to par. Yes, he was rushed in this game, and he had to make a lot of decisions quickly. But every quarterback in the league pretty much has to deal with that. That's not anything new. My point being is I think really that's the biggest disappointment for this team is the offense. Defensively, sure, they struggle, but really they weren't supposed to be the dominant part of this team, right? The dominant part of this team was the offense.
Yeah, they were. But, again, to me, there's just I don't know what's going on with Bradford. I mean, look, he made the throws. He made the throws in this game. It's just I wonder if that offensive line blocks better and he wasn't constantly having to run for his life. What that team would be like right now.
Oh, I'm telling you, and that's exactly why I brought up the Philadelphia Eagles when we were talking about the Lions, because think about, I'm sorry, but I really feel like the Detroit Lions are a better team if they have a better offensive line. I feel like we're not having the same discussion. They beat the Seattle Seahawks tonight 35-13 or whatever if they had a better offensive line, because that offense just was so inept, and the same with the Philadelphia Eagles. If they just had a better offensive line, I know people like to brag on them and talk about Peters, and even Peters has struggled this year, and they have 2 mediocre middle guys as guards.
To note that Caleb Sturgis, former Dolphin kicker, also missed a field goal and an extra point. and the field goal was from the same extra point range. So that also helped a little bit.
And no kicker in this league on Sunday or Monday, any time in this whole weekend, we're good. Let's be honest. So
even on Thursday. So this was the theme of this week. I think the kickers being bad. It was just man. I don't get it with this. But let's move on to Randy's next game here. Carolina again. The theme or one of the themes. The kicker. What the hell's going on with the Tampa Bay kicker?
Well, the former Tampa Bay kicker now. Bridza was not good. 1 of 3 of field goals, missed an extra point on top of it. I kind of feel bad for the kid. He was having issues before. He had missed a few kicks earlier this season. He's a rookie.
Yeah, last week.
But this game, you can't blame him. The rain came down so hard in just weird parts of this game. Like, I think in one of the ones that he missed, he fell down because there was absolutely no footing because the rain was coming down so terribly. But yes, he was absolutely terrible, especially in key moments where it looked like Tampa Bay could get back into the game. This game was close. It was 17-10 at halftime. Tampa Bay was not looking terrible. They shot themselves in the foot right off the bat. Winston muffs a snap and turns the ball over, and then on the next drive he throws a pick six to Josh Norman, and from there it looked like it was going to be a blowout, but they stuck in it, missed a few field goals, and then in the second half Carolina pulled away. And Gary, that's where I got to ask you, what affected Tampa Bay more, those 2 early turnovers, or the weather, or just how bad the kicker was?
Well, that's a great question, but I think the 2 turnovers early really hurt them. Weather conditions, yeah, sure, it may have slowed them down a little bit, but I really feel when you get those turnovers so early in a game, it kind of dejects your team a little bit. And I also feel like they had to have a uphill battle during the entire game, and that was a struggle for him. And not only that, with Cam Newton playing as well as he is, it's hard for your entire team to try to come back from that. So for me personally, yeah, the kicker had his problems, but it was the turnovers.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. I'm double checking a thing. So you get to the second half, and that was when one of the missed field goals happened, where they could have made it 17-13. And then on the very next play, you get this craziness where Stewart goes up the middle, gets, I want to say, 11, 12, 13 yards, and then fumbles the ball, but it goes out into the middle of the field. Ed Dixon picks it up and then goes the rest of the 57 yards and scores a touchdown. And then right there, it's over. This game ended from there. Winston ends up throwing 4 interceptions. The entire Tampa Bay team kind of falls apart. It was nice to see Doug Martin run the ball a little bit better. He came in a little banged up, rushed for 106 yards and a touchdown. But really, after that chain of events with the missed field goal and then that goofy fumble recovery, it was all over. But to me, the Panthers' offense didn't really show much. I believe that was more on the weather. Yes, they have no talent other than Cam Newton, but Ted Ginn Jr. did pop up and was looking pretty good and scored a couple touchdowns, but only 244 total yards. But to me, it's their defense. Their defense is better than a lot of people give it credit for, and that starts with a man named Josh Norman, who, again, he had that pick six. He also had another interception later in the game. And, Sean, I just got to ask you, as a Jets fan, you got to be real here, but is Josh Norman now the best cornerback in the league that wears the number 24?
He might be. I've watched him every week except this week, and he made the game-winning interception at the end of the Saints game. Now Revis did the same. Revis has done that. I think overall, I still think Revis is a better. You still want that experience there. You still want the savvy of Revis that you have. But I think Josh Norman is certainly getting there. I think he's somebody that's going to be, by the end of the season, you were talking about one of those guys that defensive players that you're going to count on, defensive MVPs. Josh Norman will be one of those players you talk about.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. He looked really good.
So, moving on to the next game, which was pretty crazy. Lots of field goals in this one. But one 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck playing quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll tell you what, the guy didn't look too bad. He was making throws. They were short. He did make some down the field too. But the offense seemed more in sync. Obviously, we're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars here, so, bear with us. But, Colby Fleener was a big deal in this game, as you'd expect with the backups. They always throw more to their tight ends than anything. You did have T.Y. Hilton kind of showed up late, but you had a lot of Dante Moncrief in this game. He was getting the passes from Hasselbeck. You had just this Hasselbeck was composed. He even ran a few times for first down. I mean, but I think somebody that you have to look at here, because Gore did have some big runs, but he fumbled again near the goal line, which is something you can't do as a running back. It's something he normally doesn't do. I don't understand this. He's done this now twice, and I mean that costs your team. And when you're thinking about it, it really shouldn't have been this close. But that's one of those things you look at when you go, oh man, they should have won by more. But these mental mistakes, so and penalties as well. Blake, honestly, I feel so bad for Blake Bortles. He has the worst offensive line in the entire NFL. The guy is constantly pressured, but he still runs for first downs. T.J. Yeldon helped him out in this game. He got 105 yards. He makes ridiculous throws to Hearns and Robinson. He escapes pressure. I mean, the fact that Jacksonville is still in these games, even though he's getting sacked and pressured so much, should show you that Blake Bortles should get more credit than he gets. To me, it's just amazing that he gets shafted on so much. But eventually, again, we're talking about a kicker. The Jacksonville kicker misses the kick that would have won Jacksonville the game. Instead, we go to overtime, and the Colts take it from there with Mr. Adam Vinatieri. Adam Vinatieri also made some key field goals in this game. I think he made a 50-yarder, 53-yarder, and even a 48-yarder too. So, if you're the Colts, Andrew Luck is now day-to-day, should start, expected to play against Houston. Do you think now with these 2 wins under your belt and the team should be feeling much better about themselves, do you think we start getting the Colts team that people are talking about that are supposed to be Super Bowl contenders or whatever? Do you start seeing them gain some footing here and start with that Thursday night game, or are we going to keep seeing them kind of hang around in these games and not play the Colts football that we know that we've seen them do before, Randy?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if we do, really. I mean, obviously you can't really look at this game as any kind of indicator with Luck not in there. But, if he does play on Thursday, hopefully he's near 100%, and we'll kind of see how he is there. And then they get 10 days to prep for New England coming in, and that's really the major indicator and the major test. And to me, I'm starting to not think we will. It just kind of seems like an off year for Indianapolis altogether. They're lucky that they're in such a rough division where, they will probably still make the playoffs and win this division. But to me, I just think it's a down year for Indy.
Gary, if you're Jacksonville, this was a hard one to take, obviously. But you do have Tampa Bay. You do have to go to Tampa Bay, but you don't have to go that far. Coming up next week. Are you feeling any kind of confident here about the team, or are you still obviously this offense is fine. They're clicking. The offensive line's not blocking, which is a problem, but they're staying in games, which is they beat Miami. They were in the game with the Panthers until late. They were in this game. I mean, so obviously Jacksonville is not a terrible team. I mean, what do you think about what their mindset should be when they're going into next week?
I think it should be the same as it's been this entire season. Is go in there and fight hard and try your best to get a W. And I think that's what they've done. I mean, offensively, like you said, Sean, They're not just awful. They make things happen. Bortles is playing out of his mind because, they are not protecting him at all. So he had to up his game just to get things done for him. So, I mean, you've got some positive there. But, they've got to keep their sights on winning, and I think they'll do the same thing. I mean, they're going to go to Tampa Bay and have to have a hard-fought battle there. But, I mean, that's the only way this team's going to keep motivated. Otherwise, they're going to mail it in. And you definitely don't want to see that happen for these guys.
Do you think we finally see Julius Thomas next week after they said he was supposed to play this week? He doesn't. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, he's still throwing to Mercedes Lewis, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. So. And there's nothing wrong with Mercedes Lewis. I mean, I know that he's gotten a little, grief, but I think Mercedes Lewis has been a pretty good tight end for him. Now, Thomas has proven that, he's one of the more elite tight ends, and hopefully, after this injury, he'll be just as elite as he was with the Broncos. But, I think we could see him. There's a good shot at, getting a chance to see his first glimpse as a Jaguar, and he'll definitely add another component to that offense, and that'll be exciting.
So let's go on to Oakland visiting the Chicago Bears. Randy, what'd you see in this one?
Actually, really evenly matched game all the way through. Neither team really pulled away. Comes down to a field goal at the end, which was made, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But I know we've all been, ragging on the Bears all year. Jay Cutler, though, comes back and just goes back to his usual suspects. Forte with 155 total yards. Bennett had 11 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. But there's no depth there. He only threw it. I mean, only 4 different receivers had a catch in this game, and I mean, they all had at least 4. So I mean, it's like 5 people on this offense and nothing else. On the Oakland side, they kind of slowed down. I mean, Latavius Murray didn't do much in the rushing game. Cooper, didn't have the big numbers. Had this great catch in the back of the end zone. Derek Carr's numbers look a little shaky. He does throw 1 interception, but it was completely not his fault. He hit his receiver in the numbers. I believe it was Murray. Hit him right in the numbers, and it popped up. And the Chicago Bear defender reaches out and takes it. But just great back and forth game that comes down to Oakland kicking a field goal with just over 2 minutes to go to take the lead, and then Jay Cutler doing a great job getting his team down into field goal range, where Robbie Gould kicks his 3rd field goal, and that's where I got to ask you, Sean. That Robbie Gould was great. I mean, especially compared to a lot of other kickers this week. How important is it to have a good kicker?
I think it's really important. I think people underestimate. For some, like Washington, they got rid of Kai Forbath. They brought this guy in. He's doing great. He has him as a kick since then. You could look at Dan Bailey when he came in for, the more experienced kicker. He has been one of the all-time. What is he? The almost all-time accurate kicker or whatever. I mean, sometimes it just works out, but having that experienced kicker, I think, like Robbie Gould, he's been there, he's dependable, he's going to make the kick. Like, I think there's just something to that when you don't have to worry about what they're doing. Like, the stuff with the Eagles, the Saints, the Jaguars, the Bucks, look at all of those teams. They either had to make a change at kicker, or even the Steelers, and they had to bring in somebody else. And then you have to worry every time they make that kick, like what happened with the Eagles, like what happened with the Saints. Are they going to make it? And you don't want to have that feeling in your head. You want to be confident that when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter if it's 50 or 33 yards or 20 yards or 48 yards, they're going to make it. And I'm pretty sure that helped Matt Hasselbeck a lot for the Colts, knowing, okay, I'm 40 years old. I'm not going to be able to do what I could do before. If I get in a tough situation, I know Adam Vinatieri can make that 53-yard field goal. Whereas Zach Hawker, can you make that, whatever it is, 20-yard field goal? I don't know. So to me, I think I'd much rather have. Why the hell does Martin Anderson play as long as he did? Because he's going to make that kick.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have that kind of security blanket where it's like, okay, we're in field goal range, so As long as we don't make that mistake, we're getting 3 points because you have confidence in the kicker. On the other side, Gary, I got to ask you, I mean, we had talked about maybe Oakland being a playoff contender after last week. You know, they go into Chicago, who hasn't gotten a win yet, and they lose to them. So were the Raiders exposed in any way, or are you just thinking it's a tough loss on the road?
You know, I'm leaning towards the second only because of the fact that, you know, from what we've seen out of the Chicago Bears, their defense has not exactly been, you know, game busters and stop teams. I mean, Arizona put 40-plus on them. You've seen Green Bay put 30-something on them. But, you know, they've shown a little bit of improvement on defense. And so it makes me believe that what we saw to Derek Carr and, of course, the rest of the offense and not being able just to really do and assert their will, it leads me to believe that, you know, the Chicago Bears have tightened up their defense. We saw last week against Seattle. Seattle, you know, it was a close game with Seattle that whole entire game, and Seattle didn't exactly just destroy the Chicago defense. So, you know, and not only that, man, look at the quarterback that they had to face in Russell Wilson, who can use his legs. So my point being here is I think it was a tough loss. I think, you know, we all know the Oakland Raiders defense is not exactly tops in the league either. So this is more of a tough loss. I don't think they were really exposed in many ways. We know who they are.
Yeah, that's true. You know, to me, I think Oakland just kind of got a bad, you know, bum deal here. You know, it's just they're at home. Cutler hasn't played. They're gonna be fired up. I think, you know, had Jimmy Clausen played or whatever, you wouldn't be even talking about it like this. So I think they just kind of got into one of those where, man, and it's not like they lost by a lot. So moving on to the next game here, Cincinnati. You know, they had the Kansas City Chiefs come visit them there. Cincinnati's defense held the Chiefs to 7 field goals in this game, which, you know, is ridiculous. 7 field goals for that kicker, but I mean that's 21 of the. It's all 21 points for the Kansas City Chiefs for field goals. Bengals wind up scoring 36. Andy Dalton throws a ridiculous pass to Brandon Tate, who then falls at the 4-yard line or something, and nobody touches him, so he goes in the end zone anyway and scores. Andy Dalton 300-something over something yards. So again, the Kansas City Chiefs defense gives up over 300 yards passing in the game. Jeremy Hill, 3 touchdowns. So we're back to the old Jeremy Hill, I guess. Giovanni Bernard also got a touchdown in this game, by the way. So, the Bengals are hosting the Seahawks next week, Gary. Do you think the Bengals really feel like they are the favorites coming in with we're talking about the NFC champion Seahawks here, but do you think the Bengals should definitely feel like, hey, we're not the Bengals of last year? And Andre Whitworth said this in a press conference. He said, hey, we're not coming here just to be good. We came in here to do something special. And doing something special would obviously mean beating the Seahawks next week.
Well, I definitely think that they should have that confidence watching tonight's game. For me personally, you see Seattle still sticking around, keeping the game close with the Lions, whose offense was pretty darn inept most of the game. And their offense wasn't able to capitalize on a lot of that. You know, they were still stopped by Detroit, and they were still having trouble. And with the Bengals defense that is going to come and play against the Seahawks, they're both going to have that battle. I think that they've got an even matchup here when it comes to defense. So it doesn't get any easier for Russell Wilson, but we've seen Andy Dalton have great games and do well against even some pretty decent defenses. So, yeah, I think that, they should come in with confidence in this game because really, let's be honest, Seattle hasn't exactly blown people away.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're looking at it from the Chiefs' perspective, Randy,
yeah,
you've got everybody else in the division is kind of with each other still, and then you've got Denver that's obviously head and shoulders above. Like, where do the Chiefs fit in this? I'm sure your whole Super Bowl pick, you're not feeling too confident about that right now.
I'm still feeling confident. Like I said, going into this game, I figured Kansas City would lose this game and go to 1-3, but they're still one game out of the last wild card spot. There's not a lot of teams once you take out Cincinnati, New England, and Denver. There's not a lot of other teams that have really pulled away from the pack. So if Kansas City can start rolling in a few wins, all of a sudden they're right there in the playoff picture. And
I mean, Alex Smith didn't have a bad game. He threw for 386 yards. He just didn't have any touchdowns. It's all field goals because Cincinnati's defense.
Yeah, they couldn't finish drives. But listen, you lose 3 straight games to the Broncos, Packers, and Bengals. You're not. It is what it is. They're not to that level yet. I mean, and that's totally okay. It's all about getting to the playoffs and then winning games. And to me, they're going to be the favorites in the next 4 games against the Bears, Vikings, Steelers, and Steelers most likely without Big Ben, and the Lions. They should win those 4 games and get this back on track, and everyone will be thinking about it. I did think that they should have beat Denver, and I do feel like they need to figure something out offensively where those 7 field goals can turn into touchdowns. But there are things to work on, and even though there are only 16 games, this is a very long season, and they have plenty of time to kind of work out the offense. The defense is pretty good, even though, the Bengals did kind of beat them up pretty good in this game, but I still like the defense. And I just have to share, I was looking up different stats and stuff, and you'd brought up the kicker. Kickers are the theme of the show, but ESPN on the Kansas City page has this great thing saying that by connecting on 7 field goals, including a pair of 50-yarders, Santos finished as the 3rd best fantasy game for a kicker since 1960.
Wow.
The only problem is on ESPN Fantasy League, Santos was only started in 2.2 leagues, or 2.2% of leagues.
Wow.
Oof.
So a wasted kicker there.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. But, also to the point of it, the Bengals defense, 5 sacks, 10 QB hits, 8 tackles for loss. They were on top of Alex Smith most of the game. That being said, Jerry Maclin still ran around for 148 yards, So, it's crazy to me. I think that, the Chiefs have, they came in, you'd think that they would sit there and be able to get in the Bengals' face, and they couldn't get to Andy Dalton this game. He basically went nuts for 321 yards. I don't know. I think at some points this Chiefs defense was supposed to be one of the best, and they're being put in their place. I think maybe are they overrated a little bit? If you're supposed to be one of these great defenses, you're supposed to be able to come up against the great offenses and put them down a bit.
Yeah, but they're just banged up right now. I'm not a bit overrated, yes, because a great defense would be able to come over or overcome some of these injuries, but they just haven't been able to do it. So, to me, it's a 9-7 team that could get hot in the playoffs. That's now how I look at it, because I still love this team overall. They just have not started out as well as I was hoping they would, especially against some of these great teams.
All right, so let's move it on to the Sunday late game, starting with Cleveland Browns against San Diego Chargers. This was a wild game with a ridiculous finish. Former FC Dallas goalkeeper Josh Lambo, 2 shots. FC Dallas, the first MLS team to clinch for the playoffs, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Gets 2 shots, does not miss the second one. The Chargers win.
Yeah, this game was
Yeah.
It was actually out of, because Sean, you and I go through and watch all these games on whatever the hell they call it, Gamecast or whatever.
Yeah.
And this was actually the last game I sat and watched today, and it was probably my favorite one to watch. Both offenses were red hot. It was a lot of fun. Josh McCown did everything he could to win this game. He goes 32 of 41 for 356 and 2 touchdowns. He goes down 8 and leads the team down for a score and converts a 2-point conversion to tie it up with, I think it was like 2:02 left on the clock. He did just everything he could, and he did it the way Josh McCown does, where, I mean, you have Travis Benjamin, who is their deep threat, but everything else, it's dump it low and have blockers. I mean, Duke Johnson is our leading receiver in this game with 9 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown, and most of his, it's coming out of backfield, in motion over to the slot, and then using crazy crazy formations to kind of do their best to confuse the defense. And then Josh McCown uses his brain and picks apart where the holes are and gives receivers all of this green to run through. So I like what Cleveland's doing. They know they don't have the best quarterbacks out there or the best talent in the receiver core, but they find different ways to utilize what they have, and they're not going to be a playoff team or anything like that. But watching them against San Diego, I grew to appreciate exactly what they're trying to do. But with that said, Sean, you've been a component of starting Manziel over Josh McCown. Even though Josh McCown had a good game, they did lose. So are you still there wanting Manziel as a starter?
I'm saying Manziel's a starter because Cleveland's not doing anything. I don't care what machinations or dreams or whatever anybody has, especially if they lose and when they lose to the Ravens next week. If McCown's still the quarterback, they lose to the Ravens, your season's over. You need to know that Manziel is not your quarterback going forward, because you need to know if you're drafting a quarterback in the next draft. You can't just sit there and go draft another quarterback and you have Manziel still sit on your roster and you know he did things for you. The guy went to rehab. He's doing the things he's supposed to do. I'm not saying he earned the right to whatever, but there apparently are players that thought he should have played in the previous game after the previous game or whatever, and they lost. They lost this game. I mean, so you still lost. It doesn't matter if Josh McCown, whatever, and maybe it's not his fault that the defense was dumb and went offside on the last play. It's totally not his fault. But, I mean, look, I'm not saying it's wrong for McCown to start in the next game. But they lose again. I don't care if it's close or if it's a blowout. At that point, it's done for the Browns. It's done. It's between the Ravens and the Bengals. Just kill it. And the Steelers, because they're not out of it yet either. So just let Manziel play after that.
I guess I can see you there. Like I said, I like what Josh McCown was doing, and he's made a semi-star out of Gary Barnidge, the tight end, and I have him in a fantasy league, so I kind of want him to stay.
I have him in a fantasy league too. I mean,
I don't think Barnidge does as well with Manziel on the field, but on the other side of the ball, again, Phillip Rivers looks great, throws 3 touchdowns, 358 yards. They have 2 touchdowns in this game that I don't know how you can be more wide open than these 2 receivers were in goal-to-go situations. But one to John Phillips and one to Ladarius Green, where, I guess Cleveland just completely sold out on the run, and Phillip Rivers just turns around and throws a floater up to his receiver because there's no one around him. I think the touchdown, it was John Phillips' touchdown, where I don't think there was a Browns defender in the end zone by the time he catches this ball. I mean, it just completely confused him. Danny Woodhead was the better running back in this game all around. So I believe, Sean, you were the one that said that Woodhead would have more total yards than Gordon, and you were by far correct. They definitely turned to Woodhead in the second half. Gordon showed signs in one drive where it looked like things were going to get going. He breaks out these 2 runs, and it looks like already he's going to get things rolling, and then it just stopped, and then they just stopped going to him. So, Gary, you and I have been big on Melvin Gordon all year. Is it time to jump ship?
Well, I will say as well as, I don't... Sean, did you say that? Because I remember arguing for Woodhead.
We argued, and I said Woodhead, and I was telling you need to drop this whole thing with Melvin Gordon's going to be this, stand out, whatever.
Nah, but I told you about the passing yards, and I'm a big Woodhead guy. I've always been, and it's because not only is he a running threat, but he's a dual threat when it comes to the passing. So I'm just saying, I was kind of surprised I wasn't on that train. I think Woodhead's good, but Melvin Gordon, I will say this, Randy, Melvin Gordon is not someone you're just going to throw away if you have him on a fantasy team. You
were right. He had 84 passing yards and also 54 rushing yards. Melvin Gordon had 38 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I have to go back and listen to it. I really don't remember. But I'm just saying, I'm surprised if I was down on Woodhead because I love that guy for years. But Gordon is a guy you put in a situation of, hey, if you have a shot of having two other guys on your team you think you like more, definitely put them on your team because Melvin Gordon, they're just not getting the ball to where he's going to succeed. Let's be honest, that whole offensive line injured. Not many healthy bodies on it, so they've had to go to a lot of backups. That doesn't help your running game at all, and I don't know when they're going to fix that. So that's why you see Phillip Rivers having to pass the ball like he has and to take advantage of the passing game. And that's also why Woodhead had such a good game because guess what? He's a receiver too.
Yeah, true. So let's move on to another exciting game here. The Arizona Cardinals visiting the St. Louis Rams. I think this was... I could have swore they were... Maybe I'm wrong on that. I could have swore they were in Arizona. Maybe not. I could have...
Yes, they're in Arizona.
Well, yes, they were in Arizona. Pay attention when you put these games on here, Randy. Actually, I think I did that. Never mind.
Randy.
I'll pay more attention to when you put these on here, Sean.
Anyway, after I just totally made myself look stupid. In the press conference to this game, I heard many players, including Tyron Honey Badger and Carson Palmer, say that they were the better team. They hurt themselves. That it wasn't about the Rams. Do you agree with that, Randy? Especially on the day when Nick Foles throws 3 touchdowns, 2 bombs, and Todd Gurley has 146 yards rushing, and he puts the game away by himself.
Yeah, it's tough to say that you were the better team when Todd Gurley did what he did to you, but they did have the 3 turnovers to none for St. Louis, and they only lost by 2. So I think if you feel like you're a great team...
They did a turnover on the kickoff.
But, if you feel like you're a great team and you lose a game, you always put it on you. You go, we're better than them. We screwed it up. We deserve to lose, but it's because of us, not them, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to come out bigger and better and stronger next week. So I like that mentality of it. But, again, Todd Gurley looked great in this game for sure. Nick Foles not making a lot of mistakes. Not the best stat line, but he does what he needs to do. And St. Louis is a tough team. They're not getting enough credit, I don't think, from a lot of people. And, they go out and they beat Seattle, and now here they are beating Arizona. So,
yeah, they had their defense just was keeping Carson Palmer down in this game. They were pressuring him. He was having to make... he made some incredible throws. Let's not play around here. He made some outstanding throws at Carson Palmer. So did Nick Foles. What a difference it makes when you have a running game for poor Nick Foles there. But they sacked Carson Palmer 4 times. I think they had about 10 tackles for loss. They had the 2 fumble. They made David Johnson fumble on the kickoff, the first kickoff of the game. Larry Fitzgerald got hit, turned around, and basically got a Rams defender just basically put his helmet in and knocked the ball loose and whatever. So that big interception that Carson Palmer throws in the end zone, which was ridiculous. The guy caught it with his helmet, like David Tyree sort of. So and then Tavon Austin comes up huge again. just it's amazing how this guy can just be nothing in one game, and then the next game he just shows up and has a ridiculous game. Just catches the touchdown. He gets the end around that gets him to the spot to get the touchdown. Then he catches the touchdown. He catches a ridiculous long throw by Nick Foles. I mean, the defense, Arizona's defense, didn't get to Nick Foles. He didn't throw interceptions. I mean, they only sacked Nick Foles once. So I think maybe you do put it on yourself that your defense didn't do well enough, because the offense was certainly keeping up with St. Louis. But that defense is better than that. They were just letting Nick Foles and Todd Gurley get whatever they wanted. I mean, they stuffed Todd Gurley for a while, and then in the second half he just blew up. I mean, I don't know if it's Arizona being tired or what, but to me, Randy, I mean, now that St. Louis has brought you back down to earth, and you are facing a beat up Lions team next week, sort of the same situation with the Rams where they've kind of been inept. Are you a little worried with, maybe the Lions come in and, I think they're going to Detroit and they're 0-4. They're going to be itching for a win at that point. Are you a little worried with how your defense played there?
Nah, because all you have to do is knock the ball at the back of the end zone and you'll be fine. But no, but seriously, listen, Arizona didn't get the job done on Sunday. I don't think they worry about it too much. They seem like they have a lot of veteran leadership on this team. They just move right on. They get ready for Detroit, and they go back to business. I don't think they're worried about it, and I'm not worried about them.
Well, the Rams, I'm sure they're feeling much better after this game. Nick Foles, do we start seeing the Rams that we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season now that Todd Gurley is around? So is Todd Gurley going to be their MVP of this season, you think?
I think it's a little too early to say that. Or are you asking Randy? Sorry.
No, I'm asking you, but
okay.
Is Todd Gurley going to be the guy that he's going to be that next Steven Jackson? He's going to be the next guy that is going to be playing with St. Louis for a while, just leading that team, rushing and.
He definitely has the potential. It's so early to say. He just came off a big injury out of college, and he's just now making his way to the pros, and had a great game this week. And I think it's it shows a lot of potential, but it's so early to say. But the way he played in this game, and the way that he was able to keep his cool about him and play like he's been playing for 10 years. I think it shows a lot out of this kid. So I'll right now, as it stands after one game, I'll say this. I think he's got a lot more upside than he does anything. I think you could see him down the line being one of the top rushers in the league, possibly, because, I mean, if St. Louis continues to put emphasis on the running game, he's going to have a good career. So,
do you think St. Louis is now something to be? Can they make it a three team race now in that division? Obviously, I mean they should start playing much better now that seems like they have more balance.
Well, we'll see how they do at Green Bay next week.
True that. And this is one of those things where I wish I could say that yes, it is the turnaround. I don't know that yet. I'm a big believer in their defense. And last week I think I stood on a table for their defense. And said, these guys are great. It's just that offense worries me. They were able to pull it off this week. If Todd Gurley can take some pressure off Nick Foles, I think you could see some changes. But I am not so.
Game when he doesn't have people in his face, that dude can throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he was doing in this game was throwing the ball.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's going to have people in his face, and you could say that for a lot of quarterbacks in this league. But let's just be honest, that's not the way it works. There's barely clean pockets unless you just have an outstanding offensive line. So, and his offensive line is not just outstanding. Did well this week, but not outstanding. So I think Nick Foles, I'm not going to jump up and down and say, he's the guy. No, I'm not trusting Nick Foles. You've got to give me more games than one to make me trust in you.
All right, fair enough. So let's go to, or should we even go to this game?
No.
Packers against 49ers. It didn't seem like it was much.
No, I watched this game when it happened live Sunday because my girlfriend's a Packers fan, and I begged her to let me change it. Because out of all the craziness that was going on in the afternoon games, and all the close finishes, this had none of them. Green Bay scored on the opening drive, and the game was over. Like, literally, the game was over. Neither team did anything the rest of the game. Like, the Packers just hung around, messed around with San Francisco. Kaepernick looks terrible. And Green Bay is what it is. They didn't do much, but they didn't need to. Complete boring game. Sean, do you remember when Kaepernick was good?
I do remember when Kaepernick was good.
I've completely forgotten now. I've completely forgotten now. I think he's forgotten.
He had a good game against the Vikings. I mean, Carlos Hyde was again, he had decent games the first 2 games of the season. Just the team is just bad. I mean, and then they won against the Vikings. So it's just like, I don't understand. I mean, they at least didn't get scored on 1-0 or whatever in this game, but I don't understand what the hell is going on with Colin Kaepernick, man. That guy just seems like he's getting to the point where he's not trusting himself again, so he's just running everywhere. I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, the game is. I mean, they showed nothing to me.
I watched some highlights, and there was like clear times where he had guys he could throw to. He just doesn't throw.
Mm-hmm.
He started running.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, man? It's just the NFL. You don't just start running everywhere. And like that's what makes Cam Newton so good. He knows when to run and when to pull it back and when to have to go for that throw. And
I think
Colin Kaepernick should know better.
I think that's kind of exactly what you said earlier, where there's just no one around him, and Colin looks at it as he has to do it himself. And you can kind of see it. I think it was Anquan Bolden during the game just getting completely irate on the sidelines. I'm sure going, I was wide open. What are you doing running? But on the other side, Green Bay didn't look great, but again, they didn't need to. So we've now seen them win with their offense. They won this game completely by their defense. So, Gary, I got to ask, is Green Bay the most complete team in the NFL?
You know what? To me, they're not. I don't know. They could be. I think there's a tight window here, and we're looking at the New England Patriots and then Green Bay Packers. 2 very similar teams to me. I think New England's done such a great job in moving the ball down the field, just like Green Bay has. Both defenses have basically, without being named great defenses, have done an excellent job this year. So, if they're not the best, they're the second best complete team in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say that Green Bay is not the most complete team right now. That's a really
all of the Patriots, though. I mean, you can't deny everything the Patriots have done. Have you seen their defense and the way they've controlled games?
I mean, but some of these teams, I mean, they play the Jaguars. Come on now.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know. It's just hard for me. I mean,
I'll agree with you.
Green Bay's played the Chicago
game,
Bears. What do the Chicago Bears play the
Chicago
Jacksonville?
Bears were actually good in that game. That was the one game where Chicago showed up.
Week 1. I mean, Week 1's it's a fantasy. Week 1 shows you nothing.
Well, exactly. The 49ers are the case of fantasy.
But New England just destroyed their team in Week 1, and that was a possible fantasy. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm maybe playing devil's advocate here. I just think people are high on Green Bay.
I'll say the defense in the Buffalo game was important because Buffalo was keeping up with them scoring wise.
And you look at New England; they're still adding to that defense. Just added to that defense.
They add every time. They make trades that you're like, what? Why are they still adding people? Like,
and they win the Super Bowls doing it.
Bill Belichick doesn't stop ever.
Yeah.
That's why he's the great. That's why he. You could say he's. If it wasn't for all the cheating stuff, a lot of people would be calling him the GOAT right now for that. Yeah. So, anyway, let's move on to the Sunday Night Football game.
All right, here, hold on. I got this pick right. Now go ahead and discuss.
Oh, hush your mouth. You almost didn't get it right, so shut up.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to get a word in edgewise for the next 10 minutes, so I got it right. Go ahead.
God damn it, man. You know what? I don't know. Brandon Weeden, it's not his fault. He made the throws he had to throw. I was almost about to get into a Miami Dolphins situation there with that last one where I was like, I cannot believe you're not running at least once here. But Terrence Williams bailed him out on that ridiculous catch. I can't believe Sean Lee probably cost us the game having a concussion. Like, him coming out had to make that stupid rookie have to play, and he missed his assignment. I don't know. What do you think, Gary? This just bothered me.
You get what you get. I mean, you've got a defense that's depleted with injuries. You've got...
It's like injuries constantly. I mean, they just can't stop.
Yeah. One of your best offensive players knocked out of the game with an ACL tear. One of your best defensive players has got a concussion magically. The week before, he had to leave with a split lip. It is bad news. They don't have the bodies. The defense relies, and this is just the Achilles heel of the Dallas Cowboys defense. They depend on that rotating defensive line. They've always done it. That's Rod Marinelli. That's the lifeblood of this defense. They are so short-handed right now that they cannot keep their head above water. They didn't have the oxygen to do anything. They were pass rushing the crap out of Drew Brees in the first half. That, basically helped them get through that. And by the second half, they were worn out. What did you see last week against the Falcons? They were doing a great job. Second half, they were out of wind. Freeman looked like Superman. And, of course, he did against the Houston Texans. You got to give him credit for that, too. But all I'm saying is you get what you get. You put backups in there. You're not going to win many games. And not only that, I just still think what we saw out of Weeden is okay. But Weeden still didn't take shots that he could have. He had to take a few, and he was successful on a few, and a lot more he wasn't. I remember seeing a lot of incomplete passes out there. And the receivers weren't all to blame for all of them. So I think Matt Castle suits up pretty soon here.
It's hard for me to take it away from Weeden when it's not his fault. This wasn't like, to me, it wasn't the offense. It was defensively. They just couldn't hang with them because, like you said, they were just out of gas. And
yeah. But how many offensive points did they put up in this game?
They didn't put up a lot.
Yeah, and so there you go.
And he did take shots downfield, but again, you got no one Bryce Butler catches a pass and he's hurt the next damn play. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know.
He could have actually been a bright spot. Like he was on the Oakland practice squad. We picked him up, and everybody's like, why the hell are you picking up this guy? Mm-hmm. Like, here comes Jerry Jones going with the cheap-ass decision, and what does he do? He gets a 54-yard freaking pass, and then he's hurt. It's just like, come on. It's like, my God, just throw it away.
Yeah.
Lance Dunbar is going to be the biggest blow to the backups right now. He has been a spark plug for whoever throws him the ball. He can get at least 10 yards for you, and it's just... That's going to suck so bad.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be so detrimental towards that. You got Darren McFadden, who doesn't get used enough, and now they'll be forced to use Darren McFadden. They've been terrified of using Darren McFadden. They're going to have to now. And
I think he should be used more in the passing game, for sure. I think you let Randall run, let him get out there and catch passes or whatever. But
he needs to be all-purpose back.
Let's be fair on the other side here. Drew Brees looked like Drew Brees. We stuffed the run for the most part. So no Devonta Freeman comebacks here, but Drew Brees did what he's supposed to. That's why you bring in a guy like Spiller so he can make that play that he made in overtime. I feel so bad for my boy Zach Hawker from Arkansas. You missed that kick, buddy. You missed it. You shouldn't have missed that kick. I'm sorry. I just feel bad for him because, two Arkansas guys not looking too good this week. Ryan Mallett looking terrible, and Zach Hawker just missing the big kick there. But, I'm just... You know what? I'll say this. You got to win your division games. Going to New York doesn't look good right now. but it's still the Giants. It's still a team that we have beat in the past. Eagles have to come to Dallas. I don't think it's all Patriots games be a wash. It's whatever. I mean, that'd be hilarious if Matt Castle beats his old team in a Cowboys uniform, but not gonna happen. It's still that whole playing 500 ball until at least Dez comes back, because that's what they miss so bad. Like, Terrence Williams can't be your only deep threat. You have to have that other receiver on the other end, and that's what I really hate, is that now you're down to Terrence Williams, Witten, who I thought had a really good game, and who else? Cole Beasley, and nobody. And Cole Beasley's not a deep guy. He's the guy you just throw to underneath so you can get some yak, So it's just...
The real test is, me and Sean, probably everybody's heard us talk about this plenty of times. Dallas Cowboys are getting a few guys back. They're getting Randy Gregory back after that bye week against the Giants. They're going to have Des Bryant back after that week.
Sean Lee if Rolando McClain's there. So
yeah, Rolando McClain comes back this week. So does Greg Hardy. So they're getting some players back. We'll see how that all pans out. I think the New England game is still a wash, like Sean said. We're still shorthanded. But I want to ask Randy this question because he's been ignored this entire time. We blab on about our team. But Randy, what do you do if you're Jason Garrett? So you've got the choice here. Do you keep everything intact and just go forward with Whedon, or do you consider making that change because you got to play the Patriots and you get a bye week? You could get this guy even more ready if you want to go with Castle.
I check in on the Miami Dolphins job. No?
Yeah.
No, you go with Whedon for another week. I mean, there's no reason to rush in Castle or even go to Castle at all. I'm with Sean. It wasn't really on Whedon in this game. I mean, it came right down to the end. They played well at New Orleans, which is a tough place to play and a tough place to win, especially when Drew Brees is looking like Drew Brees. Which is a good thing on that side of the ball. I mean, the shoulder did still seem to be bothering him, but he's found a way to work around it. But
the Saints defense is still one of the worst defenses in all the entire league. But, that's what bothered me. Is we just lost to the worst defense in the entire league, but then it's our defense that couldn't come up with the last play.
So no, I wouldn't go to Castle next week, and then after the bye maybe, but no, not for next week.
Okay.
All right, so let's get to this college stuff here. Had a few upsets. Alabama showing Georgia how I told you Georgia was going to lay an egg, because that's what they always do.
Well, there's one thing to lay an egg, and there's one thing to do that. All right, that was a complete clunker. So was the Ole Miss-Florida game. I thought Ole Miss would be able to win at the Swamp like they've done the last two times. Not even the case. Wasn't even close. Florida completely destroyed them. And now are probably the favorites in their division in the SEC, which is surprising to me. I figured they'd be a few years out with their new head coach.
Arkansas beating Tennessee, taking them out of it. So happy with that.
The shocker to me, kind of not the fact that Iowa beat Wisconsin, but just how terrible Wisconsin looked offensively. Lose 10-6, had the ball down at the goal line and fumbled it to basically lose that game. Iowa now 5-0 and could be legit. Oklahoma State making a great drive at the end, getting the field goal to beat Kansas State to stay undefeated. That was a very fun game to watch. But the main event of the evening going in was the main event.
We forgot a game. But go ahead. Let's finish here. We forgot a game, but yeah.
Yeah, the main event to me was the Notre Dame Clemson game, and it lived up to it. Clemson came out just red hot at home, took a commanding lead, but Notre Dame didn't give up, came all the way back, scored a touchdown to get within two, and just got stopped. But two great teams going at it in that environment was great to see, especially with the rain coming down and all of that. So a great way to end college football on Saturday. What do we miss?
You erased the game, actually. Looks like.
Well, I wasn't trying to go through all 10, but
the Vikings and Broncos.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it got erased from the sheet somehow.
But
Anyway.
Oh, I thought you were talking about college, but I guess
that was me. It was in. No, look. Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but whatever. Yeah. So basically, the Broncos defense just won in that game because Peyton Manning throws 2 interceptions. Peterson doesn't show up until the 4th and 1 where he makes just blows through the Broncos line and gets a touchdown. Teddy Bridgewater looked fine. He looked better than I thought he would, but they were in his face a lot. Is this, can we really be seeing like a repeat of the 2000 Ravens here with the Broncos having such a good defense, it doesn't matter what Peyton Manning does? Randy?
Yeah, the defense is definitely surprising. So they are way better than I thought they would. So yeah, I could see the defense carrying this team a lot farther than we thought.
If you're the Vikings, I mean, obviously the Bears are where they are. They won that one game. I mean, the Lions lost again, so you got a little bit more cushion there in that division. But shouldn't you have felt like you were really close to beating one of the elite teams in the other conference? I mean, did Teddy Bridgewater show you anything in this game, Gary? Or
yeah, yes, he did actually. He played under duress a lot of this game, and he still made some plays and was able to get the ball in the end zone. And so, I mean, he's kind of making me believe that, he didn't fall off the map. At first, I was starting to believe at the beginning of the season that he has been not so great, that he hasn't been the guy that was advertised in preseason. But I think this guy is starting to show me, hey, even under duress, he can make a few things happen. And, he can, at least get your team in the end zone when he needs to. It just came down to, really honestly, Von Miller ended this game. And so if it wasn't for him in that situation, Bridgewater could have led the Vikings for that win. And so I do like Bridgewater's bringing to the table. I'm not against him. I think he's still got a little room to grow, but, I mean, he's doing a lot better than he was in the previous years.
This type of Peyton Manning, he had a pretty decent game. He was still making throws and everything, but he made 2 that were not very good interceptions. It could have cost his team the game. I mean, is this kind of what we're going to get from Peyton Manning the rest of the year? He's going to have his good moments, and then he's going to throw one that he shouldn't, Randy? Or
Yeah, I mean, the good Peyton Manning's gone. He's a game manager. He's going to make a couple bad throws. But again, it's all about the defense now for this team as far as how far they go.
I mean, apparently they're not going to let C.J. Anderson sit down. They're going to have Hillman and Anderson split the carries. To me, sit C.J. Anderson down. He has done nothing. Hillman's the one that ran for the 80-yard touchdown or whatever. Like, let that dude have his moment. I don't understand with just sometimes. It's just like they just want to shove it in somebody's face that C.J. Anderson was supposed to be the starter. At one time, he's going to do something. It's just like, it's even when they threw Anderson the ball, he just wouldn't do anything. Hillman actually felt like, okay, I'm going to catch it, I'm going to run, I'm going to, just, I don't know. I feel like they're making a dumb decision there. But yeah, so now let's get into, now that we kind of went backwards, because I realized we forgot a game, but let's get into our power rankings here. It's going to be the same teams again, because they all won. And even though they all didn't win handily, and one of them didn't even play, they still showed that they're the elite teams in this league, I think. So, Randy has Green Bay, New England, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Denver. I have Green Bay, Cincinnati. I've moved New England down because they didn't play one. And Atlanta and Denver. Anything, do you have one of those teams not being in there at all, Gary? Or
No, honestly, I mean, from this week and last, I mean, I feel like all those same teams are the same, honestly. There's been some situations, during these games you think, well, maybe I'm ranking these guys too high, but, for sure for me, the Patriots and Packers have not shown that. I could argue with the Broncos, maybe to me, having some situational mishaps like Manning throwing interceptions, things like that can make me say, well, is this team as good as I want? But no, I still feel like, these teams are right about where they belong.
That's the reason why I don't want to give it to the Panthers, because overall, I don't have the Panthers on this list, and I think Randy will probably agree with me that overall Denver is much more talented.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to count on a team that's going to win you a game, you already know the Broncos' defense can do that. We know what Peyton Manning can do. We know Cam Newton's great, but Cam Newton, the offense around him is terrible. Whereas the offense around Peyton Manning is the receivers he has, and the running game is what it is. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. But we know Cam Newton's running game doesn't show up at all. It's Cam Newton. So but
yeah,
how close to that number 5 spot would you say the Panthers are, Randy?
I would have the 3-1 Cardinals still ahead of them. I would have the 3-1 Jets still ahead of them. And I probably would even have the 2-2 Seahawks ahead of them before I put the Panthers up there.
Wow. Disrespect, even though 4-0.
Yeah.
So Randy's saying it's a false 4-0 then, because of who they've played.
Yes.
Which, to be fair, they've played, Houston?
They played Jacksonville, Houston, New Orleans without Drew Brees, and Tampa Bay.
Hey, Luke McCown had one hell of a game in that game. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to say that I'd say the same thing. I think the Falcons are a better team, but I mean, I look at the teams that they've played, and they've played some struggling teams. I mean, they beat the NFC East so far. I mean,
but the Giants held in with them.
I don't care. It's still, and the Giants aren't everything. I want to clarify that. No one believes I was saying the Giants are going to do anything, because the Giants are right there in the middle.
One hell of a game in that first game.
Yeah.
They had to get an interception to win that game. I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand that. My point was the Giants, though. I think people are giving the Giants a lot of credit, and they need to be understanding that that's a very average team.
Beating Houston's nothing, yes, but
yeah. But look at my, I didn't actually write mine down, but Green Bay is number 2 for me. The Patriots are still number 1 until they prove they're not. Number 3 for me would be, honestly, the Denver Broncos, because that defense is playing really well. Peyton Manning's winning games no matter what. You guys had some teams up there, but I think for me, you've got to have Cincinnati Bengals at 4, and that's why I said 5 would be the Falcons, is because of some of those situations, the teams they played, but still they're playing really good. So I can't.
I had the Bengals at 2 because their defense has been stellar, and Andy Dalton's actually been really good, and some of the throws he's had to make has actually won them games. Whereas Peyton Manning's been suspect there, so I think it's just they've been cooking on both sides of the ball. So
I understand.
All right, so that does our power rankings. What about our player of the week, which last week was AJ Green? Randy's picking Chris Ivory, going the
absolutely.
There, so, Gary, do you have a thought on a?
Yeah, I'm going another running back. I'm going Devontae Freeman this week. He definitely had an excellent game this week, and he showed everybody that it wasn't a 1-week miracle for him. He had a wonderful game this week.
Argue with Devonta Freeman.
3 touchdowns, baby.
Touchdowns, yeah. Not stellar on the yards or anything, but he certainly had 3 touchdowns. Oh man. You could say Von Miller. He won the Broncos that game there. You could put Todd Gurley in the mix because he won. He kind of held it down for the Rams there at the end of that game. I hate doing these things. It's so much easier the way we do them because we on the wrestling show because we have the 5 and then you just pick the 1, and usually by the time you get to that it's so obvious. This one I don't think it was so obvious this week. There was quite a few that could have been.
Let's just all pick Charles Clay.
Oh, Charles Clay. What do we do without you there? Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Right now, my brain is fried. I can't think of anything.
Oh, we had no definitive pick this week? Come on. Just go with it.
Just be the tiebreaker, Ivory or Freeman.
There you go. Be the tiebreaker.
Well, I have to give it to Freeman. He got 3 touchdowns.
Okay.
I mean, look, Chris Ivory was the reason why the Jets' offense clicked. Let's not play around. But Houston's defense, I think, is tougher than the Miami defense. You know, they held Julio Jones in check. If that was Miami's defense, Julio Jones would have got 300 yards. I mean, Miami's defense wasn't playing anybody.
Okay.
So, you know. Yeah, let's just go with that. So.
All right.
Well, we've spread it around to the 3 skill positions. We're gonna have to figure out a way to give it to somebody that's not in one of the skill positions one of these weeks or something. Just not to be the cliche of it always has to be QB, running back, or receiver or something. You know?
Yeah, no. All right.
Maybe J.J. Watt will have one of his games again.
Yeah. I mean, I just, for me personally, watching all the games this weekend, looking at everybody, and that was just the one guy that stuck out in my mind, so that's why I picked him.
All right, so that does it for our Week 4 recap. We'll be back on Thursday night after the Thursday night game, which is the Colts and Houston Texans. It's in Indy, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we'll be doing a Rabble on Rabble.tv for the post game. So if
Excuse
you're
me,
watching,
it's at Houston. My bad.
It is at Houston. Okay.
It's at Houston. Okay, so glad we got that cleared up before we got out there here. So if you go to Rabble.tv and you go on their front page or something, you don't have to be. If you use the computer, you don't have to be logged in. If you use your phone, you do have to make yourself a login before you can actually use the app. And then you'll probably see something either on the front page or somewhere. Just see that little logo for WTM Network. It'll be us talking about the game. And then we're actually going to switch around the shows again. So the wrestling show will be on right after the Thursday night game. And then whenever that's over at like 2:30 a.m. or 3 a.m. Eastern or something like that, this show will be on. So if you guys are used to like listening in right after the Thursday night game, we won't be there anymore. That's why we're doing the post game live on Rabble, so we can get that there for you if you want it, because that becomes on demand immediately after it's over. You can listen to it while we're doing the wrestling show, and then you can go back and in the morning on Friday morning and listen to the rest of our preview and all that stuff. So, all right. Well, until next week, because we're kind of over the time allotted here, we shall see you later.